Now, I think it's pretty safe to say that, without a doubt, by far, one of the most anticipated Star Wars TV shows of this year is indeed the Ahsoka Tano TV series, starring actress Rosario Dawson, with the return of some of the fan-favorite characters thrown in there, as well as the introduction of new characters like Ezra Bridger, Bo-Katan coming back into play as well, Grand Admiral Thrawn, and all of these other characters like Sabine Wren. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. Now, yes, there has been quite a number of problems happening between Disney CEO Bob Iger, some of the Lucasfilm creatives, Kathleen Kennedy, Leslie Headland, and a lot of it has to do with a lot of presentations, a lot of test footage that was being supplied to Iger and the higher-ups over at Disney for both the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew, both shows, by the way, of which have been described as very much controversial shows, holding a lot of canon-breaking scenarios. Now, we're going to be covering all of what has been going on between Iger, Kennedy, the Disney higher-ups, and more. So given that we have a lot of things happening at the same exact time, we already know that Bob Iger is trying to really kind of reinstate Star Wars Legends material. Not just in the form of books, but also in the form of movies and TV shows in live-action form. We already know that Disney has been pushing the whole Legends Essentials books. That's basically kind of technically reviving Legends there. But when you look at everything like this, you have Bob Iger attempting to do really big things for the fans, bringing Star Wars movies back to theaters, really kind of allowing John and Dave to do what they want to do with all of the upcoming projects in general. So overall, with that being all pushed out there, right now Bob Iger is planning to completely reinvent Star Wars as a franchise through reviving Legends and letting John and Dave lead that into live-action form, as well as expanding back to Star Wars movies again, like I say, to bring fans into the theaters. However, it's described that just recently Disney CEO Bob Iger had a huge meltdown with Lucasfilm creatives over what they have been doing with both Skeleton Crew and the Acolyte series. Now further, it's described that Bob Iger recently sat down with Kathleen Kennedy and some of the writers of both shows and analyzed some test footage of both shows that consisted of various scenes, and Iger was said to be livid and furious over the results that Kennedy presented to him at the time, and is demanding immediate reshoots for both projects on certain scenes that were described to not only be canon-breaking material, but also material that was left extremely controversial for hardcore and even casual Star Wars fans. So let me just stop here for a second. The fact that a lot of what was shot for Skeleton Crew and the Acolyte was considered to be controversial and canon-breaking for not just hardcore fans, but for casual fans even, that just goes to show you how far Kathleen Kennedy, Leslie Headland, and John Watts took down Star Wars with those two shows. And I think that, with the respect of John Watts, I think that he was just kind of doing what Kathleen Kennedy was telling him to do. I think that he is a decent filmmaker, but when you look at somebody like Leslie Headland, she is somebody that actually wants this to happen. She wants to create canon-breaking material. She even said so herself that she wants to strip things down and start on a blank canvas to tell her own story. Now, the thing about that too is Bob Iger knew how canon-breaking this stuff was because of John and Dave. It's not like Bob Iger has this deep knowledge of Star Wars. He actually had John and Dave by his side when watching over that test footage to advise him on exactly, what's wrong here and what's wrong there. And that's how he got informed, and that's how bad it really has become, that John and Dave advised Bob Iger how bad and damaging this all really is for Skeleton Crew and the Acolyte. Now again, Skeleton Crew is not going to be coming out until probably like the fall of this year. There's no really big, window or release date locked in just yet. But this is going to be a very big problem, if they don't fix this on time or if they don't get things done accordingly by Bob Iger. So now he's initiating reshoots even more so for both Acolyte and Skeleton Crew. That could very well cause more delays for both shows, easily, without a doubt. Now, with the recent news that Rosario Dawson put out, that she now believes as an update that Ahsoka's going to be coming this fall instead. This could very well have something to do with Skeleton Crew going through all these problematic changes, and how there are a lot of things happening with that show that's causing some setbacks and a domino effect. Now, on top of this, Iger actually knew that these scenes for both projects would be a disaster to air, and has since deleted them and gotten into many arguments with Kathleen Kennedy. Not a surprise there. John Watts as well and Leslie Headland got into arguments with Bob Iger, and some of the co-writers of both of those shows also did, that took part in these canon-breaking scenes. Now, Iger knew they were actually canon-breaking since, like I said before, he had John and Dave sit down with him as advisors and informed him directly how damaging the scenes would be on the fandom and the entire community that Lucas created decades ago. Now, the grudge between Iger and Kennedy now has only worsened, and makes his plans even more concrete to fire her by this August out of Lucasfilm. So again, Iger is somebody that you always view as a reserved guy, somewhat of a quiet individual, and you can only imagine what these arguments are probably like behind closed doors against Kathleen Kennedy. You know, because he knows that his reputation is on the line. He knows that he already messed things up with the sequel trilogy by allowing Kathleen Kennedy what to do, and he technically did the same exact thing with Skeleton Crew and the Acolyte. So that's the problem. You know, that's the big problem, is that he could have stopped these shows in the beginning before it was all grandfathered into the contract, but these two shows by Kennedy are her own, and it's a part of her contract, and they have to move forward. And if they even did cancel it, it's going to cost Disney tens of millions of dollars, and they don't want to do that. So, obviously, the fact that they have to initiate reshoots, and there's a lot of drama happening between creatives and higher-ups now, it's just a mess. I mean, listen, I always like the positive side of things, you know, hearing about what John and Dave are doing, what they have in store for their Star Wars shows, but then you always have some kind of problematic situations when it comes to somebody like Kathleen Kennedy, or somebody like Kathleen Kennedy, like Leslie Headland, for example. You know, you always see some kind of good and bad happening over at Lucasfilm and Disney, and it's really just a big mixed bag. So overall, I think that what Iger's also trying to save is his image. You know, we all know that he came back for a reason, to basically fill in for Chapek when he got fired. He was the only choice, he was the fastest choice. And we already know that Bob Iger does not plan on staying for long, unless we know that the higher-ups want him out by next year. They don't really like how Iger's performing things right now. They want him out by next year, and it's kind of like a tough race. Iger's trying to quit by next year before the higher-ups fire him, is what's happening right now. So I think this is why you're seeing him scrambling around and doing all these different things and shifting around and making reshoots happen and stuff like that for these shows, etc. So anyways, with that being all put out there, guys, you know, fill me in below in the comments what you guys have to say about this whole scenario about Kathleen Kennedy and these two shows. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Gun in hand, we are alone again. From night to moon, we hear them moans again.